Hello and welcome to our research and practice brief brought to you by CIDDL. Today we are joined by Dr. Sean Smith, who is a professor of special education at the University of Kansas, as well as a co-PI on CIDDL and a PI on Project Voice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Samantha.
Yeah, so can you walk us through a little bit about what Voice is before we jump into how it's used in teacher preparation?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to clarify the acronym VOISS. Overall, it's virtual reality for social skill intervention. And of course, I haven't gotten all the letters in there, but our overall emphasis is we wanted to offer a simulated environment for individuals, particularly those with disabilities. Our primary focus have been individuals on the autism spectrum disorder in need of level 1 supports, as well as their peers with learning disabilities that primarily have as an attribute of who they are, social competence challenges. Now, of course, with that said, there's a lot of other individuals in our classrooms that have social skill challenges. And so this has been actually designed for a variety of learners with that key component. And when we say simulation, although we say virtual reality, we're really looking at the spectrum or the continuum of levels of immersion. So, for example, we have definitely developed for the full headset, for example, the Oculus, which is a wearable, and the individual would be entirely fully immersed in the learning experience, which we can talk to a little bit later about what all those ins and outs are. But also it's available on the iPad, it's available on the Windows machines, it's available on the Google Chrome. That's about 60% of our K-12 students are probably on the Chrome. And by the way, it's focused on middle school students, primarily 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and going up into 9th.
You kind
Hopefully
of touched
give it a brief introduction.
Yeah, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but can you tell us about the issues that you're trying to address through your work with VR, with virtual reality?
Sure. So as I mentioned a moment ago, our target audience are students that have social skill challenges, which some folks would say social emotional learning, social emotional competence. And so what we're trying to address is the need for knowledge and skills and an opportunity to not only learn, but practice those skills in a safe environment, in an environment that offers an opportunity for explicit instruction, an opportunity for practice, an opportunity for contextualization, all those elements that go along with why we have social narratives or social stories, video modeling, and other approaches that try to address social skills. Now, where we feel that the need for the simulation is there is that it offers more potential for generalization. So, for example, setting-wise, the individual is immediately placed into a school-based setting. So they're navigating a hallway, and all of a sudden, an instance pops up where they're having to interact socially. Let's say someone's in front of their locker, or they come to a cafeteria and they're interacting with a lunch person, or trying to navigate where to sit, or a conversation during lunch with other peers, or they're navigating their classroom, interacting with their teacher or small groups of students, or being asked to problem solve during an assignment, or maybe they're trying to follow a game in the physical education environment. All those environments are simulations where the individual interacts with avatars, and those avatars are pre-programmed in that these individuals are part of a script that educators have written, middle school teachers primarily, consultants that are focused on autism and social skill development. Experts have looked at what was drafted, as well as students looked at for understanding. Is it actually, contextual? Is this what I would say? As well as some family members all look at these scripts that then avatars have been programmed to play those roles, and the individual then interacts with avatars in preset scripted situations.
So this sounds awesome. It sounds so great for students. Having played with it myself, it's pretty cool. How do you integrate technologies to support social emotional learning like Voice and others, and VR in general, into teacher preparation programs?
Right. So, I'm going to repeat myself a bit, but I just want to make sure I'm succinct as possible. First of all, social skills can be taught, social emotional skills can be taught in a variety of different ways. Oftentimes, what we find is that the ability to generalize is always a bit of that 64,000 or $64 million question. And so where and also in that, the ability to practice and practice and practice and practice with someone being patient with them. I don't know how many individuals we've interacted with, they'll practice a social narrative or social skill and go out into the real environment and practice it. And, their peers only have so much patience. So the technology there is essential. We're not sure how to be able to mimic that without the technology, in that it gives them the opportunity to practice. It gives them a safe environment. It gives them the opportunity to have explicit social coach that's talking to them in their ear. It gives them the opportunity to interact with peers, but virtual peers. It gives them the opportunity to, lack of a better word, crash and burn, relearn an opportunity to do it again without any social consequences. So that aspect then to integrate into teacher preparation is that the opportunity also for the student that is trying to understand some of the complexities of social competence, some of the complexities of how that would have an impact on their student that they're working with across the learning environment, where the rubber hits the road. It used to be called the hidden curriculum. Post-pandemic, social emotional or social skills are much more visible for all of us to be able to address. But that hidden curriculum in the past would be, well, we assume the individual is going to learn it. We offer that support, but we generally don't explicitly teach. And so the virtual reality offers students, pre-service students, pre-service teacher education students, the opportunity to experience what a child with this type of challenge might face, what they might experience, as well as an understanding of the curriculum and what interventions should be put into place. Everything from the elements of the coach, and I should mention that as the student goes through this virtual experience, there's a coach, a virtual coach that's walking them through very explicitly what they should be doing, what they should be thinking. If there's a response that's you made the inappropriate selection as a user, there's a virtual coach there kind of walking you through why that would be probably not the most likely thing to respond to, and this might be what you'd want to do instead. And those types of experiences through the technology can broaden pre-service teachers education students' understanding of the interventions, understanding what it would look like, understanding of the complexity for the student that they're trying to serve, and the list goes on. And so while it was developed for students with disabilities and their educators to implement, it could very well be used with our pre-service teacher education students to further understand.
How can we better prepare educators to use innovative technologies like VR in their classrooms, in the field of education?
Now, that's an excellent question. And honestly, part of the project, we've created an entire tool set for the educator. Now, our focus has been the current educator in the classroom, but this, what we call voice advisor, could be utilized just as well by the pre-service teacher education students. And part of it is the virtual reality, to your question about the virtual reality. But we see this, and we truly believe this, that the virtual reality is only as good as the curriculum, so to speak, behind it. So, for example, the narratives, and I should explain, we have 140 scenarios, which could be seen as social narratives. For those of us familiar with a social narrative or social story intervention, we've taken that concept and created them into scenarios. So there's 140 scenarios that the individual with disability would move through, organized across 10 primary social skill domains that were determined from the literature, that was determined from the assessments we utilize to identify students or diagnose students, as well as experts reviewing. And I mention this because the curriculum is fairly thorough. I mentioned already that teachers are creating this, and there's been a review process, et cetera, et cetera. And so for that integration effort, yes, we established a curriculum, but from an educator perspective, as well as a pre-service teacher education perspective, we've aligned it within the voice advisor to, well, here are goals and benchmarks that would be aligned to an IEP that would crosswalk over to social skills, social emotional development. So this is what you're trying to do. And oftentimes we tend to think goals and benchmarks for our learners. Oh, and then this is a virtual reality scenario or scenarios that would address that goal and benchmark that the user could then utilize with the student, or the teacher could utilize with the student. There's an inventory we created for educators, and again, the pre-service educator as well, to understand, well, how would I understand where to begin with a student? How would I organize these domains? What part within the domain, and remember there's 140 scenarios and there's, for example, 24 scenarios per domain. Where would I start with the scenarios? Again, the inventory that the educator would fill out, thinking of a student in mind, gets them better understanding the complexities of social emotional learning, but also where to begin to use the technology. Then there's a progress monitoring tool on the other end that as the user is going through it, and we believe this is critical, there needs to be data as the student is using the technology for educators to better understand what's working, what needs to be tweaked, what element of the technology might they need to support in addition to just simply using the technology. All those are interwoven. And then we also have lesson plans that interweave the scenarios. So I'm doing this face to face. This is how the technology would be incorporated and further facilitate that overall development. I could go on, but that voice advisor is very specific to think about. It's just not simply here's the technology, use it, but it needs to be complemented with those types of supports for the educator, both the current classroom teacher as well as the pre-service teacher educator, to understand how to use and when to use the technology.
Quite the expansive system, 140 scenarios. That's a lot.
It's a full curriculum. We tried to,
Yeah.
the field was telling us they just didn't want one-offs. And that's oftentimes a lot of the virtuality experiences historically have been small experiences, and we wanted a full curriculum. So
Yeah, it sounds like really taking advantage of the fact that you need a well-trained, you need a well-developed program with a teacher to be able to implement it. It's not just a, here you go, take the technology and run. And it really speaks to the importance of training our pre-service teachers and explaining to them how to use this technology in their classrooms.
And align with current practice and good practice that teachers are learning about
Yeah.
our area in terms of social, emotional, social skill development, and being able to see and appreciate that, and then understand technology's role where face-to-face instruction only may go so far.
Along those lines, it's one of my favorite questions.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at VR, we're looking at social skills, and we're in this like really exciting time of technology where things are just rapidly changing. So what implications do you see for the future of research with social skills and VR and other technologies that might lead to more innovation? What questions might we be asking in the future?
Well, that's excellent. It's I think there's a variety of things we're wondering about right now. One of the first things we're wondering about is not only knowledge and skill, which we're pretty confident of that based on our previous research, but how does an individual then generalize from what they've learned, right? I'm using a technology, particularly a technology that's trying to teach me as an individual, as a learner with a disability. How do I know they generalize it into the learning environment, into the real world? And that's, like I said before, a bit of the $64,000 or $64 million question. And that's an element we're trying to examine right now. And honestly, the voice advisor component we think needs to go hand in hand to really facilitate that generalization. Another area that we're looking at is that level of immersion. So we've talked about the power of simulation. We've talked about the realism. We've talked about how students can get connected with it. But we started early, and we've continued to look at what level of immersion will allow the individual to feel that they're part of this experience, learn from the experience, generalize the experience, and then maintain it. And can they do it just as well off of a Google Chrome experience or the headset? We were just in Washington, what was it, last week, the week before, where we were at Expo for U.S. Department of Education funded projects, and high schoolers and middle schoolers came in from the DC public schools, and it was awesome. But they're all coming over wanting to put on the headset. And yes, the headset was cool, and yes, the novelty of the headset, but for us, that's going to wear off. And the technology, and what's the element of the technology that needs to be present? So that's a whole series of questions there. And then finally for us, and I could go on and on if we had time, but the third thing right now for us is what other technologies can be embedded within it to make this virtual reality experience so much more of an experience. And so right now we are actually investigating the role of AI, artificial intelligence, particularly in the area of the ability to have where the individual can voice respond to what's happening within the simulation, and then the system learn, and of course organize it for it to learn, so it can automatically respond based on what the student is saying and or doing, to make it much more realistic. And we believe the more realism, the more practice that's realistic, that would lead to more understanding and knowledge and skill development that should lead to generalization as well. Right now, there's a lot of text-based elements for them to respond to versus what would really be taking place in terms of their verbal responses and people responding back to that. And of course, in that instance, it will probably go from a virtual reality to an extended reality experience with a combination of VR and AI, especially for those folks out there that say, oh, VR is so passe. Well, maybe in terms of wearing those headsets, but the simulation and a lot of the principles of level of immersion and the experiences, I think, are here to stay. It just may come out as different platforms or be seen as different, like an extended reality versus a virtual reality.
Very cool. What else should teacher preparation programs consider moving forward? Looking at technology, looking at social skills?
Well, we could certainly say in social skills, but I'm gonna focus on the technology. We selected the technology several years back because of the challenge that the students were facing in this instance when it came to social skills. And they needed simulation, they needed a learning environment, they needed a place to be safe, they needed a place to safe to make mistakes, they needed something that was realistic, they needed something realistic to generalize. And so the growing virtual reality technology was like, oh, this is a place based on this challenge and what we already knew worked, like I mentioned before, social narratives and social stories, that we could potentially build within this environment to utilize this technology. And that's something that I think is representative of a lot of efforts within the field. And that is, we know the individuals we're serving, we know the challenges we're trying to address, we know elements of good practice, and technology plays a role of amplifying that good practice, accelerating that good practice, make it more efficient and more effective, and potentially even altering that good practice to a practice in and of itself. And I think that's the key role within teacher education, is making folks, yes, aware of some of the technology, more importantly, aware of what we need to be doing with these individuals that we're working with. And from that, as the technology grows and changes, my hope is that these individuals, our educators, will be able to crosswalk between, well, this is what I'm trying to do. Oh, there's a technology out here that I was never taught about, that definitely wasn't part of my pre-service teacher education program, but I was exposed enough in my teacher education program to look to technology and combine them with good practices and result in more personalized learning, as I mentioned, more efficient and more effective, or potential a different type of learning experience. And I think if we can do that in teacher preparation, what we currently have, and model that, demonstrate that, and develop that foundation, as the technology continues to change, our teachers will be able to adapt, combining good practice with those innovations that are making things, as I mentioned, more effective and efficient.
Perfect. Last question. Are there any specific technologies or resources that you would suggest for either faculty or pre-service or in-service educators and service providers looking to learn more?
That's a big question, and I'll keep it simple right now. We've been talking voice, so I'll reinforce how to get a hold of voice. Voice is VOISS. Yes, phonetically VOS, but voice. And that's an app. It's free on Play on the App Store, and you can go to our website, which I believe we can connect to this, projectvoice.org, to find out if you want to download it on Windows, etc. Voice Advisor is also hyperlinked off of projectvoice.org, VOISS. And that will allow you for an understanding of the inventory and the other supplements that we believe are critical in the implementation of that technology. Your other question, or the question I'm trying to answer, is in a way the beginning of another 15-minute conversation. So I'll stop there and let us go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to future conversations.
Thanks for having me, Samantha. And I hope this is helpful for those watching.